The persona web just became interesting again. Have you ever looked at the persona web and thought, wow, this is complicated? And then once you learn that pretty much everybody just uses 3 different traits, you're like, oh, okay, I won't touch this again. Many players in Identity V just have not touched their persona web for such a long time, and nobody even knew half the time what Spectator even did. That's the one that was at the top in the north. This was a trait reserved for maybe 2 or 3 different characters in the game, some of them not really needing to take that in the first place and should have taken other things. But NetEase has done a big revamp, or maybe just a little revamp of the persona web, and now Spectator has been replaced by an actual ability that might be worth it. This persona web trait is called Flywheel Effect, and I've been trying to think of a cool way of abbreviating it, because the same way that we call Tide Turner Tide, Broken Windows Broken, and Borrowed Time is BT, but most people call it Borrowed Time because we don't need to talk about it. Flywheel has got a terrible name in my opinion, so I'm thinking we might just have to call it Fly, or FE, petition to call it FWEEEEEE. Why? Flywheel Effect gives you an extra button on the UI where after pressing it you dash forwards, also being invulnerable for the duration of that dash, and unaffected by any type of crowd control effects. Flywheel Effect is useful in multiple different situations in the game. You can use it to dodge hits, to get to pallets if you're just a little bit too far away, getting around a corner just to dodge an ability, or just dodging a ranged attack, for example a foggy blade, or violinist's musical note for example. Another useful effect that is something that you guys will need to get used to because this does take a lot of skill is that it also avoids certain types of ranged abilities, such as for example Breaking Wheel's Snap. When Breaking Wheel uses his snap, if you time it correctly, you won't take the damage. Naiad, if you're in her water and you get to 99, 100, dash at the right time, you don't take the damage and your percentage of water goes down to 0. Gravekeeper's Hook also won't pull you in or deal any damage if you do it at the right time as well. And there are so many other effects, for example, being able to dodge stun effects like Wu Chang's Bell, for example, that won't affect you if you dash at the right time. There are so many different interactions that this thing has. This could be a tech skill if you're very well mastered in this, similar to Blink. This ability is also not one use. It does have a cooldown, but it can be used again, and it doesn't really depend on any special condition to be able to recharge. It just has a flat cooldown. Let's compare it to some of the other options then. Let's look at the downsides that Flywheel Effect has compared to Tide Turner. In general, I would say Flywheel Effect just isn't as impactful as Tide Turner is in a match. Tide Turner can get you out of an exit gate once you've been rescued. Tide Turner can help you pop that last cipher machine once you've been rescued as well. And if they do hit you, it just delays tons of time for the hunter, meaning that you can have more time as a team to decode the cipher machines. How about some upsides that it has over Tide Turner? I do think that the persona web traits that come before Flywheel Effect are much more impactful than the ones that come right before Tide Turner, meaning that your investment of points are going into more beneficial things for you overall. The ability to heal faster on the ground is much more impactful, with faster crawling as well. For everyone to be able to see each other once that person is on a chair also does feel quite beneficial. Flywheel is also very good at helping you to avoid being chaired in the first place, so you might not even need Tide Turner. It can be super effective in rescuing because you can dodge a hit and then rescue. Or you can avoid a hit if you are the person being rescued, so you don't even need to get hit in the first place, making Tide Turner kind of almost obsolete in some situations. If you are the rescuer coming in from a distance, it helps you to avoid getting double hits so that you can actually make a clean rescue without getting down before you get to the chair. There are so many more situations where this ability does feel better. How about we compare Flywheel Effect to Broken Windows? Let's talk about some of the downsides Flywheel Effect has. Well, for example, Broken Windows has a much shorter cooldown, 40 seconds even, compared to Flywheel Effect that has 100 seconds cooldown. Just in general, you'll be able to abuse this persona web trait way more often. That might make it a little bit more consistent in general and see more use possibly. I would also say that most of the persona web traits that lead up to Broken Windows are much more impactful than the ones that lead up to Flywheel Effect. For example, the ability to get a speed boost after vaulting a pallet is incredibly good, especially since it's also on a 50, 40, 30 second cooldown depending on how many points you put into it. And the Horsefly effect gives you the special effect with pallets as well. You can't really compare those to the kind of rescue buff that you get from Flywheel Effect and the faster crawling and healing speed when you're on the ground. I would also say that Broken Windows is more valuable on certain maps as well, especially ones that have some very key windows that you can use to transition to other areas. And transitioning is a very important thing in the current meta. This obviously goes on and off depending on each meta, but at the moment transitioning is really important. So Broken Windows permits you to do that quite easily without the risk of getting hit on your way to the next area. We could also say that broken windows is a little bit more consistent in its usage and is less easy to counter by a hunter, because with, for example, Flywheel Effect, it is a little bit of a mind game if you're going to use it or not. And broken windows is just you use it and then you're gone. Broken windows is also much easier to use compared to Flywheel Effect, where you have to kind of master this ability just to be able to use it. Broken windows doesn't really have this issue. It's just you can vault the window and run a little bit faster. How about some of the benefits that Flywheel Effect has over broken windows? Well, I would say that Flywheel Effect is more useful in more situations, and you can use this across all maps. It's not a map-specific ability. You can use this, as I said before, to dodge abilities, ranged attacks, slow down effects, other types of crowd control effects. All of these things are really, really useful to use and can be more useful in more situations. You can use it to get to pallets, and there are all kinds of pallets all across all maps, even ones that don't have windows. Broken windows is heavily dependent on you using a window. If you don't have a window, that some maps don't really have too many windows, well, in that case, then you're not going to be able to use it too much, and it will be kind of a useless persona web trait to take. I think there are also some survivors that will benefit from having this ability over broken windows. I think that maybe decoders, for example, that don't have too much to use to help them to escape the hunter might want to take this over broken windows, since they will be able to avoid key hits that might get them down early game, compared to broken windows where it's good for kiting, but also again situational, especially if you're the first person to get found. It might be nice to be able to dodge hits instead of having to find a window to be able to use. I forgot to put the light on behind me. But how about borrowed time? I haven't really compared that to Flywheel Effect. That's because borrowed time isn't going anywhere. Borrowed time is a necessity for every survivor in Identity V. A match's hold strategy and win condition for survivors hinges upon borrowed time. Most survivors will just wait until that last person gets hit before they pop the Cypher machine, and won't pop unless they know that every survivor is completely clear of the hunter. Popping that Cypher machine heals all survivors in the match up by half of their health and makes anyone who's on the ground stand back up again. This means that everyone can be healed back up again, and if they can delay detention out, can then go and rescue later if someone gets knocked down too without getting to the gate. Not only that, but once you've popped the Cypher machine, the strategy of waiting for a survivor to get knocked down and then popping as soon as they get hit down means that there's a massive distance between the hunter who's still in attack recovery, whilst the other survivor that just got back up again is running off in the distance with the speed boost. Another reason why borrowed time is not going anywhere is because most survivors will expect you to have it. Borrowed time is such a necessity in this game that I really wish that netties would do something about it to make it so it's actually something that's already part of the survivor's kit, but for that they would also need to adjust the hunter's persona web as well to make sure that detention was also part of a hunter's kit. There's no reason why the whole strategy of a game, where the whole game is based around this one persona web trait, is going to change just for one ability to be able to be immune for just 0.5 seconds and dash a couple of steps forwards. No other persona web trait in Identity V is as impactful as this one, so you can understand that borrowed time is ahead of all the others. There probably are things that I'm missing about the Flywheel Effect compared to the other persona web traits. Please tell me what I missed down in the comments below. If you want to see why it might be difficult for netties to implement any more of these changes that you guys really want them to, then you need to watch this video here, and it will tell you exactly why it's really difficult to balance Identity V.